Game of Thrones Season 7 Episode 5 Eastwatch, which should not really be called Eastwatch because the only actual bit of the episode in which we go to Eastwatch, we get out of there. But right away in the beginning we find out that Jaime is safe, he is not being taken prisoner by Daenerys, and he was saved by Bronn, not Dickon. Bronn came back for him. I was completely wrong right there, but I love the dialogue that they have in which Bronn basically says, well, if the dragons come back, you're fucked. And Jaime's like, don't you mean we're fucked? And he's like, no, dragons is where our deal ends. I'm out if dragons come into the picture, mate. Which I found really funny because Jaime is now so determined to run away from the dragons in the means of making peace with Daenerys. And Bronn is like, you can fight whoever the fuck you want. I'm out if there's dragons. And Daenerys is merciless in here. She unites the soldiers who did survive the battle and she calls them forth to bend the knee. Most of them do except Tarly and his men. And Tarly doesn't bend the knee, neither does his son Dickon. And we see this warmth, this fatherly love on Randall Tarly's part where he grabs on to Dickon's hand, which is nice to see, to humanize him a bit, even though I don't believe for a second he would do that for Sam. But he does that right before they die and they get burned alive by Drogon. And immediately after that, we get the men who didn't bend the knee before do it in an instant. But the importance of this scene is Tyrion's struggle to make Daenerys see another perspective, to make her breathe a little, to make her pause. And I like this merciless side of Daenerys because it feeds into that whole theory, which I think it's false, of her turning into the Mad Queen, but I like it for another reason which we'll get to. But one of the biggest and best visuals in this episode is Tyrion just walking through the ashes, and now the Rose Road is what I like to call the Ash Road. And I like the merciless side of Daenerys because right after that we get Cersei meeting with Jaime as he returns to King's Landing and him telling for them to quit, for them to run away from the battle, from the war, because they cannot win this, they cannot win against the Dothraki, and she has 3 dragons and she just only used 1. And Cersei's like, no, I'm not going to surrender, I am not going to give her the throne. We surrender and we die, or we fight and we die. And those are the only 2 options. And you see these two, Daenerys and Cersei, sharing a very similar view of the options they have, of the options they must give to one another, and how they can win the war, which I think is fantastic, because after these 2 scenes start to parallel each other, we get another side to both these characters, or at least to one of them. And that is Daenerys. She arrives to Dragonstone and she is landing on Drogon's back, and Drogon is landing right where Jon Snow is. And Jon Snow is fascinated at this creature, like anyone should and would be, and he takes out his glove and he pets him. And Drogon allows him to pet him. We even have a close-up of his eye, and you know how cats or snakes, they get these black thin lines on their eyes when they're furious or angry or stressed, but then when they're relaxed or they are trusting someone, the line gets bigger. I don't know the exact terms. I know it's the iris in the eye, but whatever. And Daenerys is surprised, but also admiring how Jon Snow can do this. She is seeing something in Jon Snow that she has not seen in anyone before. And I do believe this is making her trust him a little bit more. I believe that Daenerys is seeing that there's something in Jon Snow beyond the surface. She's seeing something in Jon Snow that probably not even him knows about it, and she is realizing that. So much so that she confronts him about what Davos said last week or 2 weeks ago, that he took a knife to the heart for his people. And Jon Snow just deviates the conversation until the Dothraki interrupt, and here is Jorah Mormont back with Daenerys. It's a very small but very intimate and very personal moment, which I really enjoyed. But of course we can't have nice things in this world, and Jorah immediately goes away from Daenerys with Jon Snow as they are heading to Eastwatch. Bran has walked into the Ravens and they go beyond the wall and they fly over the army of the dead until the Night King looks at them and they completely disperse and Bran loses their connections. And so Bran sends a letter to everyone, including Jon, who is now going away. And he confronts Daenerys about it and he's like, look, I came here trusting a stranger. You could have burned me alive. You could have had your Dothraki men kill me with one blow, but you didn't. So now I am going away and you are trusting me. And Jorah goes with him. They are heading to Eastwatch, which we'll see by the end of this episode. But I like what I see here, that Daenerys slightly smiles when Jon tells her these things. But right before, when he is describing the army of the dead and how important it is for them to head into Eastwatch, she has genuine fear in her face. And that's one of the best aspects of this episode. For Daenerys at least, it's more important what she doesn't say than what she does say, because we see a lot of genuine emotion coming into her eyes. We can read a lot in her eyes in this episode. And in Winterfell, after Bran gets his vision and he sends the letters, we get Sansa and Arya having this kind of argument over what is the best way to protect Winterfell, to keep it stable with all the lords of the north and the lords of the Vale and whatnot. And Arya doesn't exactly agree with Sansa. She says they should kill the man who opposed her and the orders of Jon. And Sansa's like, we cannot do that. I am sure that's great for the soul, that is very therapeutic, but it's not the way to go, Arya. And Arya is stepping up her stealth game, or at least we think she is. She is seeing Littlefinger talking with several people. She is suspecting him, not trusting him like she should, and she is following him around until the new Maester, which I forget the name of, he goes into Littlefinger's chambers and he gives him this copy of a letter, which is supposedly the only copy of it in Winterfell. Littlefinger steps into his room immediately after he steps out without the letter, and Arya breaks into his chambers, finding the letter under the mattress. And this letter is talking about how Ned was trying to betray Joffrey and take the throne for him, and is signed by Sansa. And it's clearly not a letter written by Sansa, at least from what I can recall. It's a forged letter. Arya takes it, but we see that Littlefinger has also stepped up his stealth game, which I find really interesting, because I'm basically, for a while now, I've been calling Arya the Batman of Westeros. And Littlefinger, he's not exactly the Joker, but he's a guy who has a lot of stealth to himself as well, but he's not exactly a fighter. He's not exactly a guy who's going to fight Arya, at least face to face. But if he is going to, I'm seeing that Bran could maybe warg into him and kill him somehow. I'm seeing that Brienne could save Arya in a predicament. I don't know, but I can't wait to see how this plot line develops, because I find it really interesting that these two are keeping their eye on each other. And while Jon and Jorah are going into Eastwatch, Davos is smuggling Tyrion into King's Landing, where he secretly meets Jaime in the dungeons. And he does this with the help of Bronn, and Jaime is pissed at Bronn, and Bronn just goes away, and they confront each other about Tyrion having killed their father, about Tyrion not having killed Joffrey, and then Tyrion proceeds to tell him what he wants to do. He wants to meet with Cersei, he wants to show her a dead man from the Night King's army. And Jaime tells this to Cersei, and she's like, yeah, right, that is not going to happen. But I can see that if we do meet Tyrion and let him show us his proof, we can maybe persuade him back to our side. And this is the cunning Cersei again. This is the Cersei that is inflexible and unbreakable in her belief and her vision. While Daenerys in this episode shows a lot more flexibility, shows much more of a human side. While Cersei has this like tunnel vision onto her, Daenerys has a lot to think about, and you see her contemplating her decisions earlier in this episode. And that's the best part of this episode, the parallels and the complete differences between these two. And as Tyrion is meeting Jaime, Davos goes and gets Gendry from Fleabottom. He takes him to his boat, these two guards come in, he tries to distract him, but then they see Tyrion, and Gendry just boom, boom, one blow to each, they're dead and they go away. One of the best moments in this episode, just best for someone who has followed this show and understands the characters, is when Gendry meets Jon Snow under the rocks in Dragonstone as he is mining the dragon glass. And they completely like each other immediately. They talk about their fathers, and it's a very similar meeting in visuals and all, like Robert meeting Ned in the first episode of the show was, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was really poetic. Equally as poetic as something I forgot earlier, when Jon is touching Drogon, it seemed like the theme that played when we saw the flashback to Lyanna having Jon was playing. I thought that was the theme. I can be wrong, it may be a variation of the theme even, but I thought that was a really nice touch. But let's go into Old Town. The Maesters are not listening to what Bronn and the Maester from Winterfell have to say in the letter, and Sam confronts them about it. They have to do something. He saw Bran, he helped Bran, he's a crippled kid who survived beyond the wall. How is that possible? They don't care, they don't want to think about it, and Sam is tired. So tired that when he's doing his late night readings and Gilly is reading something to him, she says that Rhaegar Targaryen got his marriage annulled and then at a secret ceremony to marry someone else. And we know that is Lyanna Stark. I mean, it has to be. He is not fucking people around, much less going to the trouble of annulling his marriages to just marry other people and fucking them around. That has to be the moment where he actually marries Lyanna Stark, and that changes a lot, because so far we have known him to have an affair, or at least not having been married at all to Lyanna Stark, and they had a child named Jaehaerys Targaryen. So this changes a lot, because now he is not a bastard between two families who had him illegitimately. Jon Snow, Jaehaerys Targaryen, is now 100% foolproof, undisputedly the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, to Westeros. And this may change a lot of the dynamics he has with Daenerys. And I can't wait to see what happens now, because I can't say if Sam and Gilly took that book that has that passage with him, but we see that Sam is leaving. He is going back to the Night's Watch as he has his garments on. Then we go into Eastwatch, and Jon and Gendry and Jorah and Tormund, they meet the Brotherhood without banners. Lemoncloak, Thoros the Mirror, and the Hound. And they all agree to go together. They all agree they are on the same side. They all agree to go beyond the wall, to go into the Night King's army, which I thought was a very interesting visual. When they get out and go beyond the wall, we have all this white snow covering everything in sight, and the camera moves forth, and I was expecting like to see how close they were to the army of the dead, but we didn't see it. They go into the eternal snow, and we don't know what to expect next episode, which is the first to last episode. This episode was tension filled, not necessarily just energy and adrenaline and battles going on, but we need these episodes to understand the politics and the motivations of characters. But I thought it was a slow burn, a good slow burn, a good rest from last week to prepare us maybe for next week and for the week after that. But now the important bit, my beautiful geekies, is what did you think of this episode of Game of Thrones? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? What do you think? What are your theories to come out of this episode after everything we've talked about and that you've seen that maybe I've missed? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know all your thoughts, speculations, theories. What do you want to see in the rest of the season? We don't have much more to see, but we do have some good Game of Thrones stuff to see, I am sure. Thank you so much for watching, my beautiful geekies. You guys are the freaking best. I love you all from the bottom of my heart. This week I have reviews for The Dark Tower, Wind River, and of course on Friday, The Defenders. So until those reviews, you stay beautiful, you stay geeky, and if you haven't done so yet, click the subscribe button and the bell so we can be geeky united!